My stepbrother stole from me for months to impress his girlfriend. When my mom refused to defend me, I escaped at 2 a.m., and she only missed the $2,500 monthly child support she lost. I'm 16 years old. I'm a high school sophomore, and like 2 months ago, I made the hardest decision of my life. I literally ran away from my mom's house in the middle of the night and drove 4 hours to get to my dad's house. And I know it sounds super dramatic, but when I tell you everything that happened, you're going to understand why I had no other choice. I mean, it was either that or stay living in a house where basically nobody respected me, and my own mom did nothing to protect me when I needed it most. Let me start from the beginning so it makes sense. My parents got divorced when I was like 9 years old, and honestly, it wasn't as traumatic as you'd think because they'd been fighting for years and the divorce was almost a relief, you know? At first, everything was fine. My dad stayed in the same city and I saw him every weekend. My mom worked in an office and things were normal, let's say. But then when I was 12, my dad got this huge promotion at work, like one of those that changes your life. But it meant moving to another city, that's like 4 hours away. It was hard, I'm not gonna lie, because I went from seeing him every week to only seeing him on holidays and some long weekends, but he was still super present. He called me every day, texted me constantly, and always told me that if I wanted to move in with him, I just had to say the word. My mom back then seemed okay with everything. Or so I thought. She started dating Rick like a year after my dad moved, and at first Rick seemed normal. Nothing special, but not bad either. He had a son my age, Ryan, who honestly from the beginning I didn't really like, but I thought it was just because, I didn't want a new brother or anything like that. Rick and Ryan moved in with us when I was like 13, after they'd been dating for like a year, and that's when things really started to change. What I didn't know at that moment, and this is important to understand the whole story, is that my dad with his new promotion was making a lot of money, like really a lot, and as part of the divorce agreement he was paying 20% of his income as child support. 20% doesn't sound like that much just saying it, but when your dad is making what mine was making, it's thousands of dollars a month. I had no idea about this because nobody told me, and my mom never mentioned anything about money, but turns out she was basically receiving like $2,500 monthly just for me. Things with Rick and Ryan were weird from the start. My mom, completely transformed. She started focusing entirely on her new family, and I felt more and more like an accessory in my own house. Rick was one of those stepdads who try to be the cool friend but who really only care about looking good, and Ryan was a spoiled brat who always got his way. My mom defended them in everything, absolutely everything, and if I complained about something, she'd tell me I was being dramatic or that I needed to adapt to the new family dynamic. But the truth is, I tried. I really tried to get along with them, but it was like, no matter what I did, I was always the stranger in my own house. The worst part started like 6 months ago. I had, pretty nice things because my dad always gave me nice gifts when I came to visit him, like expensive sneakers, brand name clothes, a new laptop, Beats headphones, that kind of stuff. Not because I was spoiled or anything, but because he made good money and wanted to somehow compensate for not being physically present all the time. I guess. So I started noticing that my things were disappearing. At first I thought I had lost them, or that I'd left them somewhere, but then more and more things started disappearing, and it was obvious that something weird was going on. One day, I was in the school cafeteria and I saw Ryan's girlfriend, who goes to my same school, and I almost had a heart attack because she was wearing my sneakers, some Jordans that my dad had given me and that cost like $250. And they weren't similar sneakers. They were exactly mine. They even had the same small mud stain on the side that I knew perfectly well mine had. I froze. I literally couldn't even process what I was seeing, and when I got home, I checked my closet, and sure enough, my sneakers weren't there. I did something I probably shouldn't have, but I needed to know what was going on. I looked up Ryan's girlfriend on social media. Her Instagram was public, and I sent her a message telling her I needed to talk to her about something important. She responded super fast, apparently she got curious, and when I asked her where she got those sneakers, she told me Ryan had given them to her as a gift like a month ago. I told her those sneakers were mine, that they'd been stolen from my house, and at first she didn't believe me, but I sent her old photos of me wearing those same sneakers with the same mud stain and everything. She got super serious and told me that Ryan had been giving her a bunch of expensive things in recent months, like brand name clothes, perfumes, jewelry. and that she had thought it was weird because she knew he didn't work or anything, but that he told her that his mom, meaning my mom, bought them for him. When I finished talking to her, I was literally shaking with rage. Ryan had been stealing my things to impress his girlfriend, and the worst part is that he'd been doing it for months, and I was like an idiot, thinking I was the careless one who lost everything. I confronted Ryan that same night, and at first he denied everything, but I already had his girlfriend's messages confirming everything. So eventually he admitted that yes, he had taken some of my things, but it wasn't that big a deal. That they were just material things and I could always ask my dad for more. Can you believe the audacity? The bastard was stealing from me, and on top of that telling me it wasn't important because my dad could buy me more. I told him I was going to tell my mom and Rick, and he kind of panicked and started begging me not to say anything, but I was so furious that I didn't listen to him. I went straight to my mom and Rick, who were watching TV in the living room, and I told them everything, every detail, the missing things, Ryan's girlfriend confirming that he had given her my things, everything. And here comes the part that still hurts when I think about it. Rick immediately started defending Ryan, saying I had no real proof that his girlfriend was probably lying, that Ryan would never do something like that, basically calling me a liar in my own house. But what destroyed me most was my mom. She just sat there, saying nothing, just looking at the floor. And when she finally spoke, she said she didn't want to take sides, that we needed to resolve this as a family, that we couldn't be fighting like this. She didn't want to take sides. Her son was stealing from me. I had proof. I had the damn girlfriend confirming everything, and my mom didn't want to take sides. I told her this wasn't about taking sides, that this was about what was right and what was wrong. And she just repeated that she didn't want to create more drama in the family. Rick kept defending Ryan, saying it was probably all a misunderstanding, and Ryan was standing there playing the victim, saying I was always against him and that I'd never accepted him as part of the family. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried like I hadn't cried in years. And while I was lying there in my bed, thinking about how alone I felt in that house, I realized I couldn't keep living like that. It wasn't just the theft, it was everything. It was feeling invisible. It was that my mom clearly prioritized her new family over me. It was that no matter what happened, I was always going to be the one who was wrong. So I took my phone and sent my dad a message telling him I needed to talk to him. Urgently. My dad called me like 5 minutes later, super worried. And I told him everything, crying. All about the theft. My mom's reaction. How I felt in that house. He was furious, like I could hear him breathing hard, trying to calm down. And he told me that if I wanted, I could go live with him, that I just had to say the word and he'd make it happen. I told him yes, that I wanted to leave, but that I was scared of how my mom was going to react if I told her. He told me I didn't have to tell her anything yet, to pack my most important things that same night, and that he was going to drive the 4 hours to come get me. I told him no, that it was too late and too dangerous to drive at night, but then I came up with another idea. I called my best friends, the same ones who've supported me through all of this, and I explained the situation to them. They without hesitation said they were going to help me, that one of them had a car and we could leave that same night. I waited until like 2 in the morning when everyone was asleep, packed 2 suitcases with my clothes, my laptop, my important documents, everything I could carry, and left the house as quietly as possible. My friends were waiting for me at the end of the street, and honestly, that moment when I closed the door of the house and walked toward their car, knowing I probably wasn't going to come back, was one of the scariest and most liberating moments of my life at the same time. We drove the 4 hours in the early morning. They took turns driving. I was in the back seat, half asleep, half in shock about what I was doing, and we got to my dad's house like at 6 in the morning. My dad was waiting awake. He ran out when he saw us arrive and hugged me so tight, and I just started crying in his arms because finally I was in a place where I knew someone really loved me and was going to protect me. He thanked my friends 1,000 times for helping me, gave them money for gas for the trip back even though I didn't want to accept it. And after they left, we sat in the living room and talked for hours. And that's when my dad told me something I didn't know. He explained to me about the 20% of his income. He told me that during the last few years he'd been sending like $2,500 a month specifically for me, for my food, my clothes, my needs, whatever I needed. And he asked me if I'd ever seen that money, if my mom bought me things with it, or if she used it for me in any way. And that's when I realized that no, that my mom never bought me anything. That when I needed something new for school, she'd tell me it was too expensive. that the only nice things I had were what my dad gave me directly when I visited him. My dad was furious. And I also started understanding a lot of things. My mom had been using that money for herself and her new family. Probably that's why Rick and Ryan always had new things. That's why they were able to move to a bigger house last year. That's why my mom suddenly had expensive clothes when before she was super frugal. She'd basically been living off the child support my dad sent for me. And when Ryan stole my things and I complained, she didn't defend me because defending Ryan meant keeping Rick happy. And keeping Rick happy was her priority because she already had my dad's money secured no matter what happened with me. The thing is, I felt so stupid for not having seen it before. You know? All the signs were there, but I was too naive or too optimistic, thinking my mom was just trying to make her new family work and that eventually things were going to balance out. But no, she was literally using the money my dad sent to support me to finance her new life with Rick and Ryan. My dad told me he was going to call his lawyer that same day to change the custody agreement, and that he was going to ask for primary custody, and that child support was going to be adjusted, because I wasn't going to be living with my mom anymore. I told him yes. That's what I wanted. That I didn't want to go back to that house ever again. He was super clear with me. He explained that my mom was probably going to fight for custody, not because she really wanted me with her, but because of the money, and that I had to be prepared for that. My mom didn't even realize I was gone until like 8 in the morning the next day. Or at least that's when the messages and calls started. At first, she was super worried, asking where I was, if I was okay. But when I told her I was with my dad, and that I was going to stay living with him permanently, her tone changed completely. She started saying I was being ridiculous, that I was exaggerating everything, that I had to come home immediately. I told her no, that I'd already made my decision, and she got hysterical, screaming that I couldn't do that she was my mother, that my dad was manipulating me. My dad sent her a separate message explaining that he'd contacted his lawyer and that they were going to proceed legally with the custody change. And here comes the part that confirmed all my suspicions. After my mom found out she was going to lose the child support, she literally stopped contacting me. The calls stopped, the messages stopped, everything stopped. She went from being super desperate for me to come back to simply acting like I didn't exist. If she really cared about having me with her, if she really missed me or was worried about my well-being, she wouldn't have stopped trying to communicate with me, don't you think? But no. The moment she knew the money was going to end, I stopped mattering to her. But wait, Ryan's story gets better. Turns out after I left, his girlfriend decided to investigate a little more and discovered that basically everything Ryan had given her in recent months was stolen. Not just from me, but also from his younger sister, who apparently had expensive things too. The girlfriend got super furious because she thought Ryan was this generous guy who spent his money on her, when in reality he was a thief who was using stolen things to impress her. What the girlfriend did was epic, honestly. One day, in the school cafeteria, in front of everyone, she stood up at his table and started yelling at Ryan, telling him he was a pathetic thief, that he'd been giving her stolen things, that he was an embarrassment, and that everyone should know what kind of person he was. She threw all the gifts he'd given her, including my sneakers, in the middle of the cafeteria and left. My friends told me everything because obviously I wasn't at that school anymore, and they said Ryan was completely destroyed, crying in the cafeteria while everyone looked at him and laughed. Part of me felt bad for him. I'm not gonna lie, because public humiliation is horrible no matter who you are or what you've done, but another part of me thought he totally deserved it. He stole my things, made me feel crazy when I reported them. His dad called me a liar, and my mom did nothing to defend me. The consequences were necessary. I guess. Now I'm living with my dad. I started at a new school like a month ago. And honestly, I'm much happier. My dad works from home most of the time, so he's almost always here. We cook together, watch movies, talk about everything. And for the first time in years, I feel like I have a real home and not just a house where I sleep. I miss my friends from my old school, but we keep talking every day and they visit me when they can. The custody is still being resolved legally, but my dad's lawyer says it's pretty clear that I have the right to choose where I want to live at my age, especially considering the circumstances of why I left. My mom finally hired a lawyer after weeks of doing nothing, probably because she realized the process was serious. But honestly, I don't care anymore what she does or doesn't do. Sometimes I think about how things would be if my mom had taken my side that day, if she had defended her daughter, instead of trying to keep the peace with her new husband. Maybe I'd still be living there. Maybe we would have found a way to make the blended family work. But she chose to do nothing. She chose the money and her new family over me, and that choice had consequences. I can't forgive that. At least not now. Maybe never. What surprises me most about all this is that before everything happened, I thought my mom was the most important person in my life, that no matter what, she was always going to be there for me. And discovering that basically, I was just a monthly check to her, that my presence in her house was worth $2,500 a month and nothing more, that hurt more than anything else. But at the same time, I'm glad I realized it now and not later. I'm glad I had the courage to leave when I did. My dad told me something a few weeks ago that stuck with me. He told me that sometimes people show you who they really are when they're under pressure, I have to choose between what's right and what's convenient, and that my mom showed me exactly who she was when I needed her most. And he's right. I can't keep making excuses for her or hoping she'll change. Yesterday, my dad asked me if I wanted to talk to a therapist about everything that happened, and I told him yes, that it would probably be good to process all this with someone professional. I still have days where I feel sad about how things ended, days where I miss the relationship I used to have with my mom before she met Rick. But then I remember that that version of my mom probably never really existed, or at least not in the way I thought. The new school is still weird. I'm meeting new people and trying to fit in, but it's easier than I thought because I don't have to hide anything or pretend everything's okay at home. People here just know me as Grace, the new girl who moved in with her dad, not as Grace, the girl with the complicated family who was always stressed. It's liberating, in a way. My friends from the old school told me that Ryan basically became invisible after the cafeteria incident, that he eats alone and nobody really talks to him anymore. Part of me wonders if he learned anything from all this, if he understands that actions have consequences, but honestly, it's not my problem anymore. He made his choices, I made mine, and now we're each living with the results. The only thing I know for certain now is that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, living with someone who genuinely cares about me and not just about what I represent financially. And that's enough for now, I guess.